bad things happen rarely, but they only have to be right once.
That makes sense. I could see the staff being more nervous in different countries than others, depending on, how dangerous it potentially was.
Yeah, I mean, Clinton didn't do what President Bush did, where going over into a war zone during. Remember, President Bush, 43, went and visited the troops in Afghanistan. No, I'm sorry, Iraq during Thanksgiving. I mean, it was, and
I remember that.
remember, we didn't know about it until after he left. I mean, even some of his most senior people didn't know that he was going to go visit our troops there, and that was risky. Particularly turning the lights off, as you're coming into the airport, shutting down all comms and everything, so that Air Force One landing on an airfield in Iraq with no lights on,
Wow. Wow.
stuff like that.
Welcome to the Fountain of Vitality podcast. I'm your host, Lamont Levitt. In a world overflowing with noise, confusion, and distraction, we're here to cut through the clutter and explore bold, unique paths to a longer, healthier, and more vibrant life. Through candid conversations with business leaders, wellness experts, industry pioneers, and innovators, we'll uncover insights to help you discover your own personalized, unique approach to thriving. Tune in, trust the compass of wisdom within, and find your fountain of vitality. Hello, my name is Lamont Levitt, and welcome to the Fountain of Vitality podcast. We are thrilled today to have with us Dr. Rob Darling. He's got quite a story from being in the military to working in the White House for the president and what it's like being on Air Force One. And we'll even at the end talk about where he sees the future going with AI and healthcare as well. Dr. Rob Darling, thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks, Lamont. Nice to be here. Look forward to chatting.
Tell me a little bit about your military past and how that led to your next stage of your career.
Sure. Well, I grew up on the South Shore of Long Island, in the 60s and 70s, and I knew I wanted to be a doctor very early on. But I was one of five kids, and my dad was a construction electrician in New York City, and my mom was a homemaker. We weren't poor, but we really weren't rich. Well, my dad, I wanted to go to medical school, and started looking at it. I started applying in 1980, and even back then, the tuition was $25,000 a year. Okay, so that's what is that? That's like $100,000 now.
Yeah.
Anyway, he said, well, you better get a scholarship or go in the military. So, well, I looked at. I hadn't thought about going into the military, but anyway, I went to Adelphi University on Garden City, Long Island, and had great counseling by the pre-medical advisor. Anyway, I found out about my medical school, which I eventually went to. It's called the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences in Bethesda, Maryland. It's on the grounds of the Bethesda, what used to be the Bethesda Naval Hospital, is now Walter Reed, the President's Hospital. Anyway, went to medical school there. Went on active duty while I was in medical school. So that's the Uniformed Services University is the Department of Defense Medical School. So Army, Navy, Air Force. And at the time, we had some public health students. So we all wear the uniform. We were sworn in as officers. And with the caveat, if it hits the fan and we go to war, we may take you out of medical school and give you a gun. And so that was the deal. Fortunately, that didn't happen. But 4 years, I graduated in 1985. Back then, you didn't go do an internship right away. They wanted you to go out. I was in the Navy, so I went out to the fleet. I became a flight surgeon. So what's a flight surgeon? A flight surgeon is a doctor who does specialty training in, not real specialty, but, a good 6-month program in aviation medicine. And what to be able to take care of our air crew who go in high performance aircraft or things like that. So I went to Pensacola, Florida, trained to become a flight surgeon, and I was assigned to the aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt. So and part of my job was it's probably the most amazing job I had. That was the beginning of my career. I got to fly in the F-14 Tomcat, the A-6 Intruder, anything that had 2 seats or more, flying on and off the boat. Well, if you ever watched the movie Top Gun,
Uh-huh.
ever Tom Cruise was in. He was the pilot for the F-14 Tomcat. I was Goose in the back seat. Uh, Although I had a better outcome than he did. But yeah, so I got 25 carrier landings on the USS Theodore Roosevelt, which my pilot buddies think that's kind of funny but for a doctor in 2 years on the boat, that was pretty good.
Yeah. I can only imagine the G-force or just that takeoff
No, it,
just out of control
nothing
feeling.
like it. And not only that, I mean, of course, in the fighter, I got to participate in air combat maneuvers, fighting, and all that. And of course, lots of times they would try to get the doctor sick. All of my time, they only got me sick once, and they weren't trying. But that's a topic of another discussion. But yeah, no, it was the most thrilling job that I had. And so at the time, and then I decided towards the end of that tour, I wanted to go to residency training. I wanted to be an ear, nose, and throat doctor, but that didn't work out. So I was like on the alternate list, and early disappointment. But so they sent me to the Naval Academy, not as a student, but as a doctor. So I went to the United States Naval Academy and was the flight surgeon for the entire brigade of midshipmen. So there's like 4,500, and I took care of them, but I also did their commissioning physical. So if they wanted to be a SEAL, they wanted to be a pilot, they wanted to be a Marine, they wanted to be a submariner. I was doing all of that. I did that for a couple of years, and then I got into my residency. I did that for 2 years at the Naval Academy, which was also a really good job. And then I transferred to the Naval Medical Center in San Diego, California, to start my residency in emergency medicine, which I completed in 3 years. And so again, all on active duty. And now, by this time, my plan was I was going to do my minimum time and get out and go make the big bucks as a civilian doctor. But by this juncture in my career, I just loved being a Navy doctor. And then so after residency, I go to Camp Pendleton. I was taking care of Marines for a couple of years, and then they knocked on the door and they said there is a position that's opened up at the White House Medical Unit. This was in 1995, and they said they were going to They were going to sort of competitively look at a number of doctors, and I screened early. They said we need to replace one of the 5 doctors in the White House Medical Unit. That's the unit that at the White House there's a doctor's office in the White House, and there's also one in the old Executive Office Building, now known as the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. Anyway, so I put my name in with a bunch of other docs. 3 of us got interviews, and I won.
That's awesome.
I was selected, and that was a pretty amazing. I never would have thought in my wildest dreams, given my background, that would have happened.
So what's it like at that time? Who was president before Clinton?
Yeah, President Bill Clinton was. So when I got there, I arrived in 1996.
Okay.
And so that was actually towards the end of his first term. So I actually was there for the campaign for his second term.
Okay.
So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, so being a White House physician, what are the dynamics like in doing that kind of thing, and all the people you do take care of there at the White House?
Yeah, so I mean, the main reason we're there, the absolute number one reason there, is for continuity of government. We're there, sadly, for an attempt on his life, assassination. But fortunately, that doesn't happen very often. But that's what we're prepared for. We work very closely with the Secret Service. We do something called protective medical support. That is, we integrate very, very closely with the protective detail. And if something happens, there's a training facility, a Secret Service training facility in Beltsville, Maryland, where it's like a small city that simulates everything from him working a rope line, all kinds of different scenarios that are play acted. So, and we all have our roles in our positions. And most of the time, nothing happens, but occasionally they'll have a simulated attack, a bad guy with a gun, and so we would constantly train. So our role in the medical unit was really for protection of him, continuity of government. Day to day, he gets a cold, uh, he does not feel good, or his chief of staff is sick, and as important as it was taking care of the president of the United States, taking care of those who support him to enable him to do his job was almost as important.
Right. So his family, the staff, the White House staff, and and at least a good portion of the executive branch there at the White House.
Yeah, to include the guys. I mean, the guys who, his valets, his stewards that take care of his clothes, that feed him. If they get sick or they have a problem, to include, it's a stressful place, mental health. Um, so we would do what we could, but otherwise we would refer, if they were eligible for military care, we could, refer them to Bethesda or Walter Reed, or sometimes out into civilian if, as appropriate, just like you would
Okay.
from any other patient. In fact, that's a really important part is, we have examples throughout history where the leader, you know, gets actually substandard care because they're treated special, too special, Oh, that pain you're having, anyway, so there was a constant thread that these are still, they're human beings, and you have to, get rid of the thing, uh, follow the standard of care for the president and all of those people, so you don't miss anything. And again, by and large, we were fairly successful during the time I was there.
So while you were there, obviously you were on Air Force One, many times, flying to many countries. Any neat story you'd like to share with us that
Yeah,
you're
well,
comfortable sharing?
sure. Yeah, so in my 3 years, I visited 44 countries, with the president or, well, with the president, the vice president, or the first lady. Now, of course, Air Force One is only when the president of the United States is aboard. But yeah, I hundreds of hours on Air Force One and Marine One during my 3 years. Just visiting. In fact, not only, very often I would visit the country 2 or 3 times before typically 2 times before the president went. For example, he had a very major in 1997 or 8 a trip 78. I'm sorry, 98, 1998, a trip to China where we took both Air Force Ones. There's two 747s,
Right.
27,000, 28,000. Those are the tail numbers. And this was such a big trip, but I did both the advance and the pre-advance. So before we go there, I would go over with a bunch of other staff and Secret Service to look at every venue he's going to, look at every medical facility that we might use in the case of an emergency. And so I did a lot of travel, and we did.
Yeah.
It's in my experience, it's the only way to fly Air Force One.
I'll bet.
Uh,
So a lot of logistics, where you have to prepare for the absolute worst.
Working with the Secret Service was really, they are, arguably they're the best in the world at what they do, and it's a really important mission, and everybody really has to be on top of their game because stuff happens. Bad things happen rarely, but they only have to be right once. We have to be right all the time. So
Right.
it was, yeah, it was an enormous responsibility, and yeah, a lot, we're all humans. Some of the staff would get very, very stressed over some of these, depending upon where you were with world events and things like that. But um, fortunately, they put a lot of resources into it so that we could do it right.
That makes sense. I could see the staff being more nervous in different countries than others, depending on, how dangerous it potentially was.
Yeah, I mean, Clinton didn't do what President Bush did, where going over to a war zone during. Remember, President Bush, 43, went and visited the troops in Afghanistan. Was oh no, I'm sorry, it was Iraq during Thanksgiving. I mean, it was,
I
and
remember that.
remember we didn't know about it until after he left. I mean, even some of his most senior people didn't know that he was going to go visit our troops there, and that was risky. Particularly turning the lights off, as you're coming into the airport, shutting down all comms and everything, so that Air Force One landing on an airfield in Iraq with no lights on,
Wow. Wow.
stuff like that. But yeah, we were always constantly training and preparing for bad things to happen.
Oh, that's great stories. Yeah, I remember that when he surprised the troops. They didn't know he was coming at all. That
Yeah,
was a good story.
yeah.
Well, tell me any other stories about the White House or Air Force One you'd like to share that's kind of fun, and before we move on to another
Oh,
topic.
well, gosh, it's stories that I would want to share here on this. I was there during impeachment, the Lewinsky thing, but oh gosh, some of the emergencies that I've had to deal with, not necessarily with the president, but um, we had one event that I'll never forget. In fact, I should have written should be a part of it is a part of my book that's going to be coming out one of these days. But um, yeah, we had a situation where I was flying on. I was doing the pre-advance for a trip to South Africa for the vice president, and we were flying between Johannesburg and Cape Town on a commercial aircraft. I was with Secret Service. We were doing the pre, um, and there was a young girl, unaccompanied minor, who went to use the restroom. And I'm not making this up. In fact, it's probably Googleable. But anyway, this young lady, only 10 years old, went to use the commode, and she sat down on the commode and she's lifted both the seat, not only the cover, but also the seat. And she was a fat little thing, and she did her business, and she flushed while she was still sitting on it. And it was an Airbus. It must have had a defective valve or something. Anyway, she got stuck down on the commode, which sounds kind of funny, but
Oh,
I hear
jeez.
these blood curdling screams coming from the forward part of the cabin, and is there a doctor? Is there a doctor? And as I've done, this has happened to me many times before. I look around, is anybody else raising their hand? No. I myself, we're not there. And there's this little girl on the commode, terrified, can't get off. And so this is a situation, and where these are South African people, and I'm saying, give me some lubrication. I'm trying to, like, she was stuck. I tried to take my fingers and break the seal between her buttock and
Right.
I couldn't get in there. So I said, well, give me some lubricant. They didn't know give me some butter. And I'm trying anyway, couldn't get my fingers in there. So I ended up uh, levering her, or I grabbed her by the ankles and we levered her off. And as soon as that happens, you hear this big, the thing is still sucking. Okay. I have her put her arms around my neck. I said, hold on, I'll get her. And then she faints. Right. Get her off. She goes back down. Anyway, by this time I had it down. I put her down on the floor. Meanwhile, the pilot is thinking this is something to do with, decompression or whatever. He's like 30 degrees nose down. Anyway, what's so scary about this is the real scary part is I look between her legs, and she has what's called a prolapsed rectum. So the analogy would be like if you took your sock and went inside out. Well,
Oh no.
yeah, that's between her legs. Now she's unconscious, so that's not my first thing to address. Um, anyway, AB's. It seemed like it was forever, but about within 40 seconds, she's breathing again, and she's her pulse is like her pulse is like 30. But I'm stimming, and then again, I glance back down. I'm saying, how am I going to deal with this? I am not a surgeon,
Right.
and I may be a flight surgeon, but that doesn't mean I'm a real surgeon. Fortunately, I don't know. It seemed like it was for. I looked 2 minutes later. It was about this long, sticking out of her rectum. And then, anyway, she was what we call self-reducing. Because her muscles and everything else, she's coming awake. But anyway, she revives. We're down on the ground. They call a medical emergency. There's an ambulance there with a doctor in Cape Town. By this time, the patient is stable. Hand her off. Now, everybody knows all in Cape Town. There's this big emergency involving the White House doctor. We go to our hotel. By the time we get it, it's called the Cape Grace Hotel. I'll never forget it. There is like 20 press wanting to talk to me. And anyway,
Wow.
I got to my room, called the White House. I said, "Here's what happened. What do you want me to do? Don't talk to him. Stay out. We'll." And anyway, I stayed in my room for like 24 hours. Had food brought to me. Nobody bothered me. And then the next day, I said, "I want to go. Take me to the hospital. I want to see this kid." Went there. Real happy. I talked to the surgeon. Everything turned out quite nice. They scoped her and everything. She didn't have any permanent injury. But anyway, that's one of my more famous. That story actually is one of the more interesting ones that happened. There was an article in the paper. I have a file on it. There's an article in the paper how Airbus completely denied that there was anything wrong with their commode, their toilet. I had done research on it, and nothing like it had ever been reported ever on an airline. I mean, you think that could be most people, they lift the seat, they don't, or the cover, they don't, do anything with the seat. But this kid she was a 10-year-old kid. She didn't know what she was doing.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, they denied it. But there was a lawsuit, and I remember getting a letter from the mother about a year later thanking me for saving her daughter's life and saying, "Doctor, we went to court and we got $10,000." And I'm thinking, and she was an exclamation point. I'm thinking to myself, "Oh my God, in the U.S. that would have been probably add 2 zeros to that."
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, it was. But I get this beautiful card and everything like that. But yeah, that was one of my big stories. There
Wow.
were several others that I probably can't share on this.
Sure. Sharing what you can share is great. I understand. well, Doc, as you've been involved in healthcare your whole life, and you've got a plan to make a difference in healthcare moving forward, love your thoughts on what you're doing now and how you see AI in healthcare and how you see patients managing their healthcare differently, or what does healthcare look like in 5 or 10 years?
Oh yeah, yeah,
What are your thoughts there?
yeah. So I would say that we live in one of the most amazing times in human history right now with AI coming. Particularly, well, this is a classic example of the two-edged sword, particularly as I see it as a former military physician. So, as you can imagine, artificial intelligence, and we're only at the first, there's going to be several iterations coming. I forget what they call the current one, but obviously on the bad side, what our adversaries can do with it from the point
Sure.
of warfare, but what's going to happen in medical care is just amazing. I mean, we're looking at it right now in our practice. How when I get a new patient, what do we do normally? When I enroll a new patient into my practice, okay, we ask all the other practices, send the records. You get the records from the cardiologist, the rheumatologist, all, and then somebody painstakingly goes through those, whether electronically, a human being, and you might, in some cases, you might spend a few hours reviewing everything that's been done on this patient, and then you try to summarize it. Well, guess what? With AI right now, AI can take all disparate, can take radiology reports, um, laboratory reports, PDFs of narrative summaries from other physicians, from surgeries, it can even take, I'm told, even handwriting. We know about doctors' handwriting, right? Hand notes. And in many cases, it can do a really fine job at essentially summarizing all of that into something, an actionable, here's what you need to know about this patient. Now, you still have to read it all, but that's coming. And I mean, it's already here. Or this conversation we're having right now. Um, we can set the iPhone down, and there are these that can listen to that conversation
Yeah.
and turn it into a clinical note. And it can actually even delete, like if we have a little sidebar about the weather and how, or your vacation with your family. That doesn't go into the note. It's smart enough to know. So I don't know when the last time you've been to your doctor, but so often, less since the electronic health record, people comment to me all the time that they go, the doctor doesn't even look at them. The doctor's typing
Right.
typing the note because that's how you get billed. For I haven't been in that type of practice in a long time, fortunately, with what I do. Um, but yeah, so this kind of technology is just going to be breathtaking. It's what it's going to do, and not only that, you have some strange sort of complaint, what we call it, figure out what's the differential diagnosis. AI is going to be able to help us make better, more accurate, quicker diagnoses. It's not going to take us. It's not going to take doctors over. It's going to be a tool like anything else. It's got to be a tool that you have to incorporate, know how to use, and how to use it as to be able to leverage the good care of your patient.
Yeah, what I love about AI is it allows patients to even become more engaged in their own healthcare. They might not have thought to tell the doctor, "Oh, I also did X, Y, and Z, which may have contributed to this condition. What do you think?" And a lot of times they don't tell you what's going on in their life, and you're left as a doctor to guess what might have caused the condition they have.
This is exactly the point. So, particularly if you're a primary care doctor, you're not the super subspecialist, right? Someone
Yeah,
comes in with some vague, unusual complaint, but they've got this history of LARDs or environmental exposures. They worked as a miner. And, when you plug all of that into the patient's history and then you ask the AI for help, it's an amazing, we had an example. I'm working with a company right now about this, and they gave this one example of a patient that came in with, muscle weakness, and the beginnings. Patient wasn't overweight, but the beginnings of type 2 diabetes. Anyway, nobody could figure what's going on here. Turns out when they plugged in all the stuff, particularly about what the patient did for a living, um, had exposure to arsenic, which didn't even have a significant arsenic level, but it turned out that that was probably the cause, and it prompted the primary care doctor to order additional tests, and they figured out, yeah, it turns out even low exposure to arsenic can predispose one to type 2 diabetes, and that's
perfect example.
an example. Yeah,
Yeah, perfect example. That's
yeah,
that's
yeah,
So, and that's where AI gets exciting to me is these little corner cases where the doctor isn't left to guess. They can dig more about that patient history and
yeah,
really help them with the solution. That's awesome.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. It is really neat.
yeah. Well, thanks a million for being with us today. Any last words you'd like to share with our listeners regarding health?
You
That's
know,
some,
well, you know what I thought of, if I just thought of, I said I just thought of another good story from the White House that your people might
love to hear it. Love to hear it.
find interesting. I just happened to look at one of my mementos, and yeah. So now this one is definitely they could look up. So I was with President Clinton on what we call an off the record event. Um, Again, I want to say I think it was 1998. Anyway, we were in Arkansas, where he's from, and it was the night that two things happened. It was the night that Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich resigned from Congress, um, and it was the same night that the space shuttle went into outer space. And it was remember Senator Glenn? He was an
Yeah.
astronaut. He was formerly an astronaut. Well, he was in the space shuttle. Those two things happened, and so we are in Arkansas in at his friend Bubba's house with him and 50 of our closest Secret Service agents. And the doctor in the military, that's the guy who carries the nuclear football. We always hung out together, and we got far away from them as possible because, we're staff, we're not part of the party, right? So we're over in the corner. But anyway, watching from the corner, I see the chief of staff, I think it was John Podesta at the time, running up to the president saying, "Mr. President, Senator Glenn is in outer space and he wants to send you an email. And we only have a 1 hour because they're entering the Earth's atmosphere. They're going to enter, and there's like a 1 hour window where you can send a message."
Huh.
And I see President Clinton look down at Podesta and says, "Make it happen." And Podesta turns around and looks at it's called WACA, White House Communications Agency. This is the Army unit that's responsible for the president's worldwide communications. That's their thing. Anyway, they could launch a nuclear war for him. They could do anything possible. But remember, this is 1998 or 1999. Nobody had a personal laptop except one guy, me. I had my 25-pound Toshiba laptop, and I had started using email with AOL at the time. So I said, "Tell Mr. Podesta, tell NASA, tell them to send it to rdarlingmd@aol.com." That was my email address at the time. So
25-pound laptop. That was those old bricks.
Oh yeah. I got a picture of it on my wall. Anyway, so that email. So John Glenn sends this 2-paragraph email, goes to NASA. NASA sends it, and it gets to my laptop computer at Bubba's house. I had to take apart his phone. Remember the dial-up modem? It was like, yeah. So I took it, all came in there. Mr. President comes down. I sit him down. He sits down on my computer, and with his index fingers types a 2-paragraph response. Took about half an hour. Sends it, goes out. It was only in his 8 years as president, he only sent 2 emails, and one was to the troops in Afghanistan or something like that, or whatever, and the other one was on my laptop.
On your laptop, Toshiba.
The White House photographer came down, took pictures. He signed. When we got the picture a month later, normally you're supposed to go through a whole bunch of things to get something signed, but I used to give him his allergy shots once a week. I'd go up into his room. He's getting out of the shower. So I said, "Screw this. I said, Mr. President, would you mind signing this email?" They did a White House press release for the emails, Glenn's email and the president's response. I got the president to sign it. Literally, he's getting out of the shower. We had his underwear on. And he just, "Doc, can I get a copy of that?" And then it was like 2 weeks later, Senator Glenn was in the White House, and I tracked him down and I got him to sign it. And the same thing is, "Doc, can I get a copy of that?" And it's kind of neat. So
that's fun.
Yeah. So that's one of my great stories. I ended up selling it on. I went to Christie's because I was just a poor Navy doctor, and I had three kids in private school. I made good copies of it, but yeah, you can Google that. It's still on there. If you Google emails to that President Clinton sent, you'll see my little story there.
Oh, that's fun. What a great story.
Anyway, all right, that's enough. We call those sea stories in the Navy. So
sea stories. Doc, it's been great talking with you today, and good luck in your practice, and good luck in the evolution of AI as it relates to treating patients. And I'm looking forward to more good than bad coming from AI. We got to look at, it's like when the internet first came out. It can be used for good or bad. Same thing.
The chief technology officer is named as Shyam Sankar, chief CTO of Palantir, which is big onto AI. He just had an article on Fox, I think yesterday or the day before, talking about how everybody's so freaked out over AI when, in fact, everybody take a deep breath. We're going to manage this just like anything. Things happen with new technologies, the invention of the wheel, the printing press, all these different things, the computer. We manage it. So anyway, I would urge you. It's a great, really reassuring.
I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah. So,
well, Doc, thanks again for your time, and good luck to you in your practice. And thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Catch you again. See ya. Thank you for tuning in to the Fountain of Vitality podcast. Head to fountainofvitality.com for more episodes, insights, and resources. Remember, your health is yours to own. Take charge, focus on what you can control, and keep exploring what works for you. Always be your best self, lift others, and trust the compass of wisdom. Until next time, stay vibrant and take care.